Hi, I'm making this little video just to show the knee knockers, which is an amazing exercise to stabilize the pelvis, to get away from compensating with the glutes and the upper fibers in the glutes and really using the glutes where they meet the hamstrings right at the base here where there's actually like a crease. Yeah. So, and it balances the muscles in the front and the back of the hip joint, and also it teaches good footing and keeping the ribs stable while engaging the core. So it has a lot of benefits. There's a ton of detail in that. That's why I'm making this video. And then the other thing is we're gonna start with a little bit of hydration with the tissue by shearing. And shearing is just laying the body on a tool and then moving a body part, and I'm going to explain that as we go through it. So this is for the side hips, and generally speaking, the tools we use, you can use a block, a yoga block. Most people have that for the knee knockers. Otherwise, if you have a melt roller, you can use that. Then generally we use a melt ball, which is nice and squishy to lay on the side hip when we're doing the shearing. If you don't have that, you can use a tennis ball, but if you use a tennis ball, you need to have a folded blanket and do this on top of a folded blanket, especially if you have a firm floor. Otherwise, all that happens when you use a tennis ball is you're just going to cringe, and the muscles that are on this, the tissue on this, will just create more surface tension. So the body always meets the surface tension of whatever tool you might be using with the exact same resistance either, or it can relax into it. And because these balls have give, the tissue can give too, and that's the whole point. That's why we don't use firm foam rollers. That's why we don't use generally tennis balls. You can use a tennis ball if you don't have anything else, but then, as I said, use a folded blanket. So we're going to start with the hydration, because the great thing about this is that when we work on the side hips, we in essence also work a little bit, address tension that is in the IT band, and we will make our knee knockers a little bit more efficient and effective. So for example, if you do an assessment before you do this exercise, that would be great. I'm going to take this out for a moment. I'm going to lay on my back and I'm going to see what I feel in my body as I lay on my back. So if you don't assess, you never know what you get out of your exercise. So as you're laying on your back, notice how your legs are rested on the floor. Notice your glutes. Are they the same tone, left and right? Do you feel that you're mostly on the sacrum? Are your glutes relaxed? If your glutes are making fists, so there's a lot of tension on one or both sides, that is a faulty movement pattern you have adopted, and the neural pathways are off. That's how you can feel it. That's what it feels like in your body. So what we want is fluffy glutes. We want to have the sacrum blending in with the back of the pelvis, not being the one single point that's pressing down. In the legs, we want to feel that the glutes are nicely spread out, the thighs are relaxed, and calves are also relaxed. So thighs are as heavy as the calves and vice versa. Up here, we want to feel that the ribs are firmly on the floor in the mid ribs. So what we don't want is that there is an arch under the back. You can see I can lift this up and then create an arch that also creates then my pelvis tipping forward. That's going on for some on the right side. And if you have that on the right side, you need to really work at tucking a little bit on this side when we're doing the knee knockers. But that's later down the road and it will remind you of that. So first, just notice what you have in your body. Does one leg also feel longer than the other? Is one more turned out than the other? Those are all things to notice. Those are all imbalances in your body that you from day to day don't even realize, and your body is working really hard and is very inefficient in what it's doing because it's off. So now that we know that, and we're going to come back to that, the next little assessment, take your block, bring it underneath the back of the pelvis, right under the sacrum. And I'm going to ask you here to tuck your pelvis and sink your ribs to the floor. Looks like this. And then you're going to keep your ribs heavy and you're going to tilt. And tilting, I'm just reaching my pubic bone away from me and I'm pressing straight down into the block. And I want to notice, is there a small range of motion or pretty fluid and smooth? Or is it kind of, when I try to keep my ribs down, I barely have any movement in my pelvis. So do that a few times back and forth on the exhale, tucking. Pubic bone to the nose, ribs are heavy. And then tilting, you're only lengthening the pubic bone away from the navel. Ribs don't come with. So feel what that feels like and feel if it's congruent on left and right side. And that's your assessment. So now we're going to start with hydration. Take the block out. I'm going to show this with the milk ball. If you have a tennis ball, you're going to use the tennis ball in that same exact spot that I'm pointing out. And you will have a blanket underneath the hip. So where we're going to be working is, in essence, here's the side hip. Here's the crest of my bone here, yeah. You can feel that on yourself. There's this top. And then there's another sticky outy bone down here. That's your femur bone. That's the greater trochanter. And then in between here, there are muscles. There's like a muscle going straight down. There's a muscle here that's also part of the glute and medial gluteus minimus. And then more to the front here, that's what we're all interested in. That is your TFL muscle that also tensions the IT band. And so this is what we need to address in most people on both sides. If you work on one side, you work on the other as well. So again, I'm going to point out the sticky outy bone, your femur bone here. TFL is a little bit anterior. There's like, if your seam of the pants would be here, you can also work on top, right on top here, a little bit further back with the ball. So the placement is like this, and you can even go a little bit further back. We're going to start in the front. I'm going to show you how to lay on your side. So you're going to find that spot and you're going to be laying on your side. And when you're laying down, it might be quite a bit tender. So find a spot where you don't cringe. If you are just cringing, you're not going to be able to release anything. So you can tip your pelvis a little bit forward and back. In me, you can see I have hip creases here, and the ball is in essence right at the end of this hip crease here, but it's underneath. Then from here, I'm going to bring my top leg a little bit forward out of the way. I let my body weight sink in there, and you might want to take a breath in and out. And take that leg out of the way a little bit, just that you can see the other leg. And all I'm going to do, I'm going to keep my pressure consistent on the ball, and I'm going to straighten and bend my knee. Like that. It's called an indirect shear. And what you want to feel is where you're resting on the ball, that muscle is not firming up when you're doing this movement. But rather you're finding a way to relax there and moving the foot back and forth. Sometimes for people it can be helpful to have the leg a little bit elevated on off the floor, to have the right, that you can drag the leg a little bit on the floor. And that might make it easier and just put a better pressure on that leg. You do that 6 to 8 times, you pause, take a breath. You're going to roll yourself back and you're going to move the ball a little bit more posterior. So instead of being right at the end of the hip crease here, I'm going to go more to my side of the hip. And I'm now in the gluteus medius. And I'm definitely tender there. And I'm going to just do the same thing. I'm going to move my leg, just the lower leg. I'm not moving my thigh. And then you can rest. And take a breath. Roll back again. And then you can even come a little bit further back, but now it's a little bit different. You're only going to roll halfway towards your side, so you're in a half back position, and you have pressure on the ball. So I'm at 45 degrees, and now I can just bring the knee in towards me and bring it back down. And you'll feel that addresses a little bit more your external hip rotators, and it's nice if you address the one to also do the other. If there is any grabbing or pain in the front hip, what you can do is have a band or a strap around your knee and pull with your strap the knee up and down, that the leg can be completely relaxed. All right, so let's do this on the other side. And here I'm going to show it with the tennis ball. I'm going to have the folded blanket, and you can make it as thick or thin as you want. If I lay on my back, I know where my hip crease is right at the end. I can have my fingertips here, and then I'm just going to be laying on there, and I might not roll so much forward. If I roll a lot forward like this, then there's too much for me, too much pressure on that area. I can't relax. So for me, with the ball under there, because I'm tender there, I have to roll a little bit back where I can tolerate the compression. And then I'm just gonna straighten and bend that leg. So I'm stepping the top leg back that I can be a little bit rolled back with my pelvis. And then you're gonna rest and you're just gonna breathe. And if you feel yourself holding against the tension with the tennis ball is just too much, get a racket ball and use that, or get the melt ball set on meltmethod.com, or from me. I have them too. So then you're going to bring that ball a little bit further back from your hip crease and roll on your side again. See if you can tolerate the compression. It's also very tender, so I personally have to be tipped back. If I go here, it's pretty intense. I can try it and see what that feels like. I actually can do it. So I can be here and bend and straighten the leg. The more relaxed the body, the more you get out of it. If you hold tension, you don't get anything out of it. Resting again with a breath. And then one more time, I'm going to bring that ball a little bit just closer to my sacrum. And I roll back. And that's more in the glute area. And I do that same motion again. That's what's nice with the squishy ball. It's a little bit, you can be more accurate with your pressure. A tennis ball, a little bit less. It's just a little bit big is all. And then you can rest again. You can roll off this. Take that out. Come back for a second to the block underneath the pelvis. And now try to do your tuck and tilt for a moment. So tucking the pelvis, sinking the ribs, and then tilting the pubic bone away, even though the ribs stay down. So tucking, pubic bone comes towards the tip of the nose, and then tilting. So for me, I'm much more fluid and I have more range of motion. Just because I released on this side area my tension, which is imbalanced left to right in me as well. So tucking and tilting again, and tucking, keeping the ribs low and tilting. This is a great preparation for what's to come now. So this is just your assessment for that movement. I have greater range of motion, so I did it correctly. And you can also lay down for a second and notice what happened for me. For example, my sacrum is way more spread out and softer on the floor, and my calves and thighs feel more even on the floor, and my ribs are further down to the floor. So actually I have a functional body that I could do exercise with. If I had exercised with imbalance, I would be more imbalanced after the exercise. So for the knee knockers, make sure your feet are in one imaginary horizontal line. You can either bring yourself to your edge of the mat, or you can make sure your toes step together in pigeon toe and then bring them out so that your feet have the same distance left and right from your seat. The block, depending on how wide your pelvis is, you're going to either have the narrow side in between the knees, can also have the wider this side in between. I'm going to put the narrow side for me, and then I'm going to just squeeze my knees a little bit into the block. I want to make sure that it feels even left and right. So I'm holding on to the block now. And that helps my back of the pelvis to widen as the front narrows because my knees are narrowing. Once you have that, listen carefully. This is the sequence how you need to do this. You need to press your feet first down into the mat and away from you. And when you do that, it should look like this, so that your whole body moves towards the head end of the mat. And I'm not pushing down much, and my whole foot is on the floor. I'm not pushing down with the front of my foot or the toes. All of my foot is pressing evenly down, and away is important from me. Maintain that. Squeeze the block. Come up 1 inch, ribs stay on the mat. Once you're here, you're going to think about squeezing your glutes right where they meet the hamstrings. So you want to narrow that area. The front widens a little bit. Once you feel that, and you can have your hands here, you're going to press down and away from you more, and then think about you're handing the block to someone that's down there by reaching your knees over your toes. That elevates the pelvis more. Hip creases get flattened out and disappear. And while you have pressure with the knees into the block, try to, in the femur bones, externally rotate in the hip sockets. And I try to get a little bit more extension here in my pelvis. It doesn't have to be full extension because the ribs have to stay down. We don't want to arch like that at all. And then slowly let your pelvis come back down and let everything go. That's the most important. Don't hold any tension. Every repetition is its own thing. Press down and away. That loads the torso this way. Then come up 1 inch, ribs stay on the mat. Squeeze your glutes, squeeze the block. As you're coming up higher, reaching the knees forward, femur bones externally rotate as you're still pressing into the block, and that's so there's opposing forces going on. That stabilizes your pelvis, and then slowly come back down, and then you're going to pause. We're going to do that 2 more times like that, and then we're going to add on. Pressing into the block, coming up 1 inch, pause. Feet are pressing down in a way. I didn't say that, that's a given. From here, you're going to reach your knees forward away from you. Footprints are even left and right, and you're externally rotating the femurs here. Still pressing into the block. I'm feeling I'm really getting narrow through the lower glutes, and they're firm. And then as you go down, the femur bones internally rotate, and the back of the pelvis gets wide on the mat. Last time. Press down and away. Pelvis only comes up. Core is engaged always. I did not say that, but it's a given. When we do stuff in melt, core is always engaged. Toned, feeling like your hip points are drawing towards each other. Reaching the knees forward, squeezing into the block. External rotation in the femur bones as the knees reach. And you're going to hold that always for a moment. Repetition doesn't do anything. You have to be conscious, not unconsciously doing repetition, and then coming back down. So only 4 times. And we're going to add on. Squeeze the block, come up 1 inch as you press your feet down and away. Ribs stay low as low as you can. Reach the block forward, externally rotate. And now you're going to press down through the right foot more, right in front of the heel. Should feel hamstring and glute engage. And then left side more. And then right side more. And left side more. Check your ribs, they need to be low. And then right side. And left side. Should feel it right at where your hamstring meets the glute. And right side and left side, and then continuous movement down, always keep tension there, and back up, reach the knees, femur bones rotate in and back, come right back up, femur bones go forward, knees reach back. Careful that you're not now lifting the ribs, I just did, and then reaching forward, and then all the way down, taking the block out, that your legs go long, and feel how that has changed your backside. Ideally, glutes are soft, thighs are softer on the floor, calves are soft, and overall, if you did it correctly, you only have your low back curve from the back of the pelvis to the belly button. If it's up higher, then you were arching your ribs up, and you won't. That's not the correct neural pathway. Have to keep the ribs low, rather don't come up so high with the pelvis. It's not about quantity, it's about quality here. And we're going to do one more time this assessment with the block underneath. So you're going to try your tuck and then your tilt, and that should feel even easier now. Tucking and tilting, you can actually see there's a bigger movement for me available. And the cool thing is I don't put any effort into it. I can just do it so easily. And I hope you got similar changes with this. And there you go. Have fun practicing.